Hey guys, it's Lisa. Listen with Are You My Cousin? And it is Thursday, so it is time for another Facebook Live. And I am being joined by Cheri Passey today, one of my genealogy buddies from South Carolina, actually, although she's actually sitting in Albuquerque right now. But anyway, before we get started with what Cheri and I are going to chat about today, I've got some announcements, and I do want to tell you I'm super excited about being back. I've missed at least 2 weeks of Facebook Lives. I've been traveling, and I don't typically travel as much, guys, as you know, and so it just kind of happened all of a sudden, but I am happy to be home, happy to be back chatting with you guys on a Thursday afternoon. So if this is your first time joining me for a Facebook Live, I want to tell you a special welcome. If you have joined me for other Facebook Lives in the past, thank you so much for returning. I'd love it if somebody doesn't mind just giving me a thumbs up or something in the comment section, just to let me know that you guys can hear everything and everything's working okay. If you have questions throughout as we're talking today, feel free to leave a comment because I'll be monitoring those, and we can certainly ask questions of Cheri as she talks, or you can ask questions of me as well. So a couple of more announcements before we get started here. Let me grab my notes so I remember what they are. Okay, tomorrow, the 4th, I want you to head over to your YouTube channels, or actually just check our Facebook page here, because I will absolutely give you the link there. There is a project over on YouTube by 7 genealogists called Project Genealogy. And what that is 7 genealogy YouTubers have gotten together, and we've all made videos on a variety of topics, but it's under the umbrella of migrations, and basically how our ancestors' migration affected their lives and our research as well. So it's quite a variety. All the videos are going to go live tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But you don't have to be on there right too. We'd love it if you were, but that's okay. They're going to be up there forever, so you can go whenever is convenient. But I will put a link here on the Facebook page for that. So be sure to watch for that tomorrow. I'm really super excited to be part of that project. Also, coming up on October 14th, mark your calendars, guys. I have a 5-day challenge coming up because we are going to get our our ancestors' photographs out of the shoebox, and we are going to get them digitized. So join me for a special challenge starting on the 14th. It's just 5 days. Guys, it's super easy, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to be doing the challenge too. So I think I'm speaking as much to myself as I am to you guys. And then on the 24th, I'll give you a sneak peek and let you know that I have a new updated book coming out on identifying your ancestors in those old family photographs, because you know the ones. It's the ones that they have come down through the family, but nobody has any idea who that person is anymore. So I have a new book coming out on that, and October is a busy month, but that's okay. It's Family History Month as well, guys. So to start off, let me check. Thank you so much for those of you guys who have we've got Cheryl from Oklahoma. Thanks for letting me know you're here. That lets me know you guys can see everything. So without further ado, I am going to introduce my good friend Cheri Passey. Like I said, she is from South Carolina. We have, oh gosh, I don't even know how long we've been seeing each other at genealogy events, Cheri. It seems like a long time. But so we get together. We love to get together when we're at the conferences. But she is a fabulous researcher, and she researches pretty much all over. But she also specializes in African American research. She also does some repatriation research for the Army, and I actually said that correctly. And Cheri also is the hostess of Gen Friends, which is now on YouTube as well, and is a great time to sit and watch and listen to just genealogy friends sit around and chat about specific topics in genealogy. It's a lot of fun. So I will have links to all of that and how you can get in touch with Cheri in the comment section. I'll drop those in soon so that you can follow up with her later if you want to. But here's Cheri. Hey, Cheri, how are you?
I am good. And like you said, I'm coming to you from my son's house in Albuquerque, where I am watching my grandkids while my son and his wife spend a week in Italy. So who knows? We may have a dog barking, a clock chiming. I don't know what might happen since I'm not at home where I can kind of better control circumstances, but they're all in school, so that's good.
That works too. That works. That's great. I'm excited that you could join me today. Thank you
I
so
am too.
much.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Debbie said, oh, hey, Debbie. Debbie's from California. She said both screens are blurry. Debbie, they are actually in focus for me. So if anybody else is having issues, pop that in the comments and let me know. Yeah, everything looks clear. Are you looking clear over there, Cheri?
I am, yeah. Looks good.
But I will continue to monitor that. I'll actually, once Cheri gets going here. So Cheri's here today to talk with us about African-American research about how descendants of enslaved ancestors and descendants of enslaved owners, did I say that right, can work together to break down a lot of genealogy brick walls, and why the collaboration between the two is crucial to success on all sides of research. So Cheri, I'm going to let you take it away. I think she and I chatted a little bit about what we could chat about, but I'm going to let you take it there and we'll go from there.
Well, absolutely. It's so important because, it doesn't matter what part of the country you're from. I know that sometimes when we think about slave owning ancestors, we think, oh my goodness, I don't have any, ancestors that lived in the South, so I won't find any slave owning ancestors. And that's just not true. People north, south, east, and west own the enslaved. And when you're looking through paperwork for your ancestors, don't be surprised that if you come across something that shows, could be a will, could be almost any kind of document that you might find that names the enslaved. And so it's really, really important when we find that information that we don't hide it. And I know the first time I found a document, it really hit me that, and it was just, it was one of the slave census records, which is a misnomer in itself. It's just the list of the people who own slaves. It's not a list of the names of the slaves. But when I first found that and realized, oh, this is my ancestor. Oh no, I own slaves. I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, and I was horrified. But really, I shouldn't, have been surprised, because really most of my ancestors are from South Carolina and North Carolina. So I shouldn't have been surprised, but I think sometimes we just, maybe have some blinders on when we start researching. And so I started trying to figure out what I could do with this information once I found it. And the key is, anytime you find a record that names the enslaved, or even if it's a free person of color, get that information, take it out of whatever document it may be in, and then get it out in the public. And the reason why you want to get it out in the public is so that their descendants can find them. Because you remember, pre-Civil War, pre-emancipation, those names, it's very hard to find names, and it's very hard to find names with a last name. Even sometimes those last names can change after emancipation. It still is a clue. It's a clue that can help African Americans find their ancestors. And these names haven't been spoken for decades, for so many years, that if you pull them out of a record and put them out publicly, their names, they're being remembered. And that's what we want to do, is we want to remember these people and help them connect with their families.
So when you talk about getting them out into the public, so you're absolutely right. Where do you suggest doing that? Is there a certain place, or is it just for blogging, that type of thing?
Sure. Well, the first thing I do is I will create a blog post. I will pull all the names out. Any of the information that I can find, location, the name of the slave owner, pull the names out. Because, as most of you who blog know, once you put something out on a blog and publish it, then Google's going to take that information and index it. So you're posting names. Somebody's looking for slaves that maybe that person owned. They'll come across your blog post, see that slave owner's name, and look at those list of names. And maybe they've had a family story that they had somebody named oh, I don't know, David, that was owned by, somebody in this particular county. And they can, it doesn't prove that that's their person, but it's a clue. It's a clue for them. Sometimes they're just looking for slave owners in a particular county so that they can find out who their enslaved were. So they'll search for a county. So put all that information, the location, the name of the slave owner, and then list all the names of the enslaved in the document. Put what kind of document it is. I always put the photo, a picture of the document as well, so they can then pull it up and look and see if there's anything that they were looking for that maybe I missed. So I always do that. I always blog about it. There is a project called the Slave Name Roll Project that was started several years ago. And what they do is you can go to it and you can take the link to your blog post that you just created about this document and submit it there, and they will put it under the location, the state. Say I'm doing something about South Carolina. They will put it under the South Carolina link. So those people who are researching and looking for the enslaved in South Carolina can go to the South Carolina page, and then it's got the different counties, so they can narrow down a little bit, or they can just browse through all the documents that have been found for South Carolina in hopes that something in there will help lead them to their enslaved ancestors. So there's that. There's also Facebook pages. There's several African American Facebook pages that will take that kind of information. And one especially is the IAAM CH page, and that's the International African American Museum page, and it's their Center for Family History specifically. They've got a page for that. So it's the IAAM CFH page on Facebook, and they love taking that kind of information. So that's another place where you can do that, and you can just put the link to your blog post on there. And yeah.
Is there a way, so if somebody's not a blogger though, is there a place where they take things?
You can do the
same
thing. If you're on Facebook, you can do the same thing. You can just write that down. You don't have to put it in a blog post. You can just type it all into the into the comment section and say, I found this document. You can even upload the document. You can just put, transcribe everything just right there in that comment section. So that's a good way to put it out too. So you don't necessarily have to blog. The good thing about blogging though, however, is because it gets it out. So, maybe you don't blog, but maybe this would be an opportunity to just say, well, I'll blog for this specific purpose because I know that I've got all these documents, and this is a good way to get it out. It might be a good way if you've ever thought about blogging, but really haven't had that, push to do it. This would be a good purpose is to start one for this. Yes.
And I did drop those two links in the comment section there for those two projects. So yeah.
So that's where I normally do it. Is I put it on my blog and then add those links to different places, Facebook groups. So you could even go to any of the African American groups and say, I've got this information. Would it be okay for me to put it here? And I'm sure they would say, absolutely, please put it here. Because like I said, so many people are looking for that information. And so it's one place to aggregate all of that so they can go and look. And there's several other places that I will send you links for too, and I learn about new links all the time. So anybody, watching this or any, right now live or afterwards that know places that are taking this kind of information, please share, because the more places we can put it out there, it's like when you're doing your DNA or your family tree or whatever. If you just put it in one place, you don't know who's going to look in that one place. But if you put it everywhere, you're more likely to be able to get that information out where it's going to be found. So put it everywhere.
Put it everywhere. Yeah.
Share it everywhere. Share it everywhere.
Share it everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now if somebody has, Cheri and I were talking before we started about, for instance, I actually have a copy of a bill of sale for an enslaved person. How would somebody who has that, how would I get started on researching that person, or how would I to know more about this child? This was actually a child, and I would love to know more about her. And if somebody's out there looking, connect that. How does somebody do that?
Exactly. Well, the first thing I would do is I would take that document, like I said, I would pull out all the information and get it out publicly in whatever platform you feel comfortable with doing it. And then I would start looking through that ancestors' documents. Look and see if you can find plantation records. Those, a lot of times, are going to be in manuscript collections, not so much online. You may be lucky enough to have an archives or a library with those collections near you that have started to digitize and put things online, but a lot of these are not online yet. Low Country Africana is a wonderful website that Tony Carrier has, and they have a lot of plantation records that have been uploaded onto there, so you can go there and look and see. Whatever state you're in, look and Google, do a Google search and find out if there are plantation records, if there are records underneath your ancestor's name, and look and see, because a lot of times that's where you can find more information and perhaps more on that particular name that you've got in that record. Visit, if you know that your ancestor owned a plantation, or owned any property that maybe is still available for you to go visit that the enslaved were held on, take a visit and see what they may have in their collection. They may have something specifically there that they haven't shared anywhere else. I went to, I happened to do that. I was able to do that. I found out that my father's line, it's now a resort area. It's run by these really sweet nuns, different nuns that I've ever seen before. They don't wear the habits or that kind of thing. They're very, I don't know, they're just very like peace and love, and they're just really they're really sweet. They're really sweet. So I called them and I said, can I come? Because it's this retreat now. I said, my ancestor used to own this property. May I come visit? And so, I was able to go and look, and they had their, dream catchers all hung up and all, it was just really cool. It was a really, so they took me on this big old tour. And then I said to them, do you have any records? Do you have anything on the plantation? And part of that was spurred by the fact that they took me back to the slave cemetery. Wow. The slave cemetery had nothing. There was no markers when they first purchased the property. They have tried to find, you can go into a cemetery and you can kind of find, where you think graves are. So they put little crosses and markers and a little sign so people at least know it's there. And so that was spurring me on to, oh my goodness, these people need to be remembered, whoever they are that are buried there. So what do you have? So they took me into the office and they gave me, unfortunately, it was just a typed, so I don't know the provenance. I don't know where it came from, but it was a list that my ancestor had written, or a list of his enslaved. Wow. Now this record was not just, just a group of people, just 3 or 4 people. It was like 3 or 4 generations. You could see, it didn't have the men, but it had the women, their children, and then you could see those children then having children for the next couple of generations. So I asked if I could make a copy, if that would be okay, if I could make a copy, and if I could get their permission to give this to the South Carolina Historical Society archives. And they agreed. And so I was able to send that. So now anybody who thinks that they may have enslaved ancestors on this property can, if they're searching, can look in the South Carolina Historical Archives, and it's in their catalog, and they can pull it up, and there's this list. So that's something else you can do too. If you feel like maybe this is a piece of information, a document that isn't anywhere else, you found it like that, or you find something in personal collections in grandma's attic or something like that, call and see if you can donate it somewhere, and then that record will be there for everybody else who's looking for it to find. So I actually went down I went and called it up to make sure it was in there. So I did. I went down there and it was there, and so I was really happy to see it was in there. So that's something else you can do as well, is make sure they have copies in areas where people are prone to be looking for that kind of information, so that because just sitting there in this plantation and their records is not going to help too many people, but
Right.
putting it into an archives where, people can go look at their catalog and see that it's there. It made me feel good that I was able to at least do that,
Right.
But as far as who is buried in the cemetery, we could just assume it's probably some of those people on this list. So,
Right.
but at least their names are remembered somewhere on this list, and family units are remembered. Whose mom who had these children, and so that's going to help a researcher along the lines to especially if they have a family. A lot of African American genealogy is family stories, because they don't have the documents and they don't have the paperwork. So if they had a family history of a couple of names together, they could look at that and go, oh my goodness, I found them, and this is their enslaver, and this is where I know they were, and then they will start researching as well that person and his paperwork and his documentation to see if they can find more. So that's what you would do, is you would see what you could find more that maybe can help you understand a little bit more about, who he had enslaved on his property and what happened to them perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And then another good thing that you can do too is see if you can work down. So you've got these names, maybe you can do some research down the line and see if you can find a descendant that you can help. And I've had a little bit of success doing that. And I've had some people contact me and say, your ancestor, I believe, enslaved my ancestor. Can you help me? Do you have any records? And that is a wonderful thing to do. And I encourage people. We were talking a little bit earlier about sometimes when you find these records, it's a little bit of a shock and you don't know what to do. And a lot of people want to hide it, which we have seen publicly on TV shows, and they don't want it to come out. They're afraid that if they say, I have slave owning ancestors, that somehow the African American community is going to look down on you. My experience has been totally opposite. They want help. They can't find their ancestors on their own. And so we can work together. And that's what we want. So if somebody contacts you, say on Ancestry or Family Search or any of Facebook or whatever, and says, I think we're connected. I think your ancestor may have, enslaved my ancestor. Don't be afraid to answer that and work together, because it's a very, it's just that communication and that conversation between the two of you will be healing for you and healing for them as you work together to see if you can't connect that family. So don't hesitate. And I also like to tell the African American community, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out. If you discover and have a feeling that you found somebody whose ancestor enslaved yours, reach out to them, because we're trying so hard to spread the word, to connect, research together. Your family, especially when there are incidents of DNA, you are family. Your ancestor had a child with their enslaved, and they are related to the person that's, you are related actually to the person that's contacting you. Don't be afraid. They're not trying to, contact you to,
Right.
It's history. I mean, it's history. And so we can't change that history, but we can do something positive through that, through the records that we find and through the things that happen. We can do something positive and we can work together. So connect with one another. Just connect with one another and have that conversation.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Genealogy is, I don't think, ever meant to be a one-person type of thing. It's always been kind of a team sport, regardless of what area you're researching. Mm-hmm. And I do think, in order to get everyone's story told,
exactly,
we collaborate, definitely. So.
Exactly, yeah. So I do have on my dad's side, most of my is where I found most of these slave owning ancestors on my dad's side. So, and those are the connections I've been trying to make. And I've been very surprised when I did the DNA that my mother has 2% African American. But but I'm not connecting. I can't seem to connect with So I'm hoping that whomever they will do, we need some more DNA testing done, I guess, so that we can connect, because she and I would both like to know where that's, where that is coming from, and see what we can do to help, with that, because that's going to be DNA's family, and we want to help them connect with the family. So I'm hoping that as more DNA is done on that side, I'll be able to help with that.
Yes, DNA is crucial in a lot of these. So Debbie had a question, and I know you can't see the question, Cheryl. She says, do plantations tell the stories of what life was like on the plantation for slaves/owner usually?
The records are basically just going to tell you who they owned, who they sold, that kind of thing. Although there are some plantation owners or people that lived on a certain plantation that would keep journals, keep those kind of records. I have read some of those have been put into book form, where they talk about the enslaved, and and you can get some connections through there. So also go to the local libraries and see if they have any information. Local libraries are very crucial in finding, especially that type of thing. Diaries, letters that have been put into books. Check the historical societies in the areas where you're looking, because a lot of times those people that work in those historical societies are experts on the areas, and they know where these things are. We can't find them. They know where they are. They can say, you know what, if you just go down the street and take two left-hand turns and down around the corner and talk to Miss So-and-so, she knows all about it, and she can tell you what you need to know. So always, look on the internet first, and then after you've exhausted that, then go local. Spend your time and your money then going local to see what you can find locally. I have seen some things in some collections that were actually letters written and things like that, where they would speak about discipline, those types of things, or sometimes the plantation owner's wife would go down and help the midwives that the African American community was using. Sometimes they would go down and help with the birthings. I mean, I've been real surprised at some of those things that I've read. So don't forget, like I said, to look at those manuscript collections and go local to see if anything has been printed in book form as well with those, because those can be very, very, just because it's the day in the life of that plantation. See what they may have written.
The other place you can look too, there are it's slave narratives. I know.
Yes, exactly.
There's and I'm sure you're familiar with Documenting the South collection of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill has, and that's primarily from the entire South, not just the Carolinas.
The Library of Congress has some of the slave narratives as well.
Yes, and those are absolutely fascinating to listen to. They're tough to listen to, I'll be quite honest. But if you are trying to kind of learn about this, put your ancestors in a social context, those do a really good job of that. And those are good places to look as well.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you too, I know we talked a little bit about to find these records, a lot of times you need to find these smaller type manuscript collections and things like that. Have you used Archive Grid to find those, and are you being successful finding them on Archive Grid?
Yes, I have. Archive Grid is wonderful. It's wonderful because you can't think of every little place to look, and so that helps you find these different places, these different manuscripts and things like that. I also, before I forget, also there's the Freedmen Bureau records. Check those and see what you can find in the Freedmen's Bureau records, because after the war, some moved on. Some of the enslaved, once they were freed, they moved on. A lot didn't. They had nowhere to go. They really had nowhere to go. They didn't have any money to move. They didn't have anywhere to go. And so they would sign contracts with their former enslaved, or they might move down the road a little bit to somebody on another piece of property that might give them a better deal. And you can kind of find out a little bit more about their life and connect with slave owners. You can, there's a lot of different records that you can post Civil War that you can look at too, that can help you, help you connect with former slave owners. And once you've got that name, and that's the key sometimes too for the African American community, is trying to connect with that slave owner. And one of the myths is that they would take their slave owner's name. And I know several African American researchers will tell you that studies have been done that show the number of the enslaved that adopted that slave name was really quite small. Also, they would change the name, and sometimes, and that makes it difficult too, because they would for some reason decide to change their name, and so it's hard to document them going down the census records because they're not always using the same names. And so for those circumstances, what you're going to want to do is look for those family units. So if you've got a family unit with a different last name, but all the first names are all the same and the ages are all the same and they're living basically in the same area, that's a clue that that's probably the same family, but they've just changed their name. So that's why it's so difficult. It's so difficult. And then we can help. We can help by sharing the records that we have that can give these clues. So that's how we come into play. Exactly.
That's a good point. I would not have thought about that, about the change. I knew they didn't necessarily, very few of them really took the enslaved owner's name, but I didn't realize they were changing their name as well. Yes. So here's another interesting record, because if I don't talk about it now, it'll just go right out of my head because I still have a little jet lag. So Southern Claims Commission records. I don't know if you've used those before, but those can be kind of fun. So after the Civil War, there were a lot of Civil War soldiers who decided that they were going to claim to the government, the United States government, that they were coerced. They were always supporting the Union. They never fought for the Confederacy. As a matter of fact, they donated land and property and food. Now, some of them probably did, but for the most part, these men they had nothing after the Civil War. They'd lost so much stuff. And so they saw this opportunity to maybe get some animals back, to get some money back, to get some land back. And so they would file this paperwork. Now, it wasn't just paperwork. They had to go get neighbors and people that knew them during the war to testify on their behalf. A lot of the people that testified for them were their former enslaved. And some of the questions that the formerly enslaved would be asked were, where were you during this time period? Who was your slave owner? All sorts of questions about their lives. So when you research in the Southern Slaves Commission records, you're not going to want to research by name. You're going to want to research by county. You're going to want to see who filed these petitions, and you're going to want to look for, it doesn't matter if it was a rejected petition, and these are on Ancestry.com, they're on Fold 3, so you can look in both places. Look for all the rejected ones and the accepted ones, because they all have the testimonies in them. And you're just going to have to read through all the testimony, and hopefully you'll come across, that person that you're looking for, and he might say, you may be looking for, in Tom Smith's file, but a man may say, I was owned by George Jones, or something like that. Right. So read through it all. They can be quite interesting. And you'll always see, every person will say, he was always a Union man. Everyone, I will testify, he was always a Union man. And it's just really funny, because maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But at that point, it doesn't matter. What matters is the wonderful information that you can find about the enslaved. And sometimes people, it took me a while to figure out that there is some great information about the enslaved in these records. So like I said, you need to go by county versus by surname. So unless for some reason you're searching for a specific surname. But on the other hand, if you're looking for information about your ancestor, he still may be a witness in somebody else's. So still look. Right. Look through the whole county. There is and I'll have to look it up because it just popped into my head. Angela Walton Raji was on a project where they
there's a map, and it'll show you where the Freedmen's Bureau records were up, because they would have to travel to go file these records.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, I can't remember if, I don't think there's a case for the other ones, but I believe, but the Freedmen's Bureau, your ancestor may be from a certain place, but they may have had to travel to the nearest biggest town to actually file those records for you to look through, to search to see if there's something there. But they've created a map, and I'll have to get that link to you so you can look into that.
If you get that.
It's not popping into my head right now what the name of it is. So,
yeah.
But the others are on Fold 3, and they're on Ancestry to get those records for, I was always a union man. And you owe me this many pigs.
You owe me.
You owe me pigs. And they took my cows, and they took so much of my land, and they ate all my corn.
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing too, is you kind of learn a little bit about that property and what they had, So
right. You learn about the property. You really learn, even if you never find your ancestor, you learn there's a social history component there that you learn about the community. And that's never, ever a bad thing when it comes to your research.
No, absolutely.
It'll come in later. So Debbie had one more, she had a follow-up question to what we were talking about. She said, who did they interview? And I know she's meaning the oral history collections. They interviewed former slaves, actually.
And how they chose them, I don't know. Do you know, Lisa? I don't know how they chose who they interviewed.
I don't. I think it may vary based on from like one collection to another, as opposed to like what the, the documenting the South or the Doc South. Those tend to be, well, obviously Southern, because they it's predominantly in the South. It wasn't completely in the South, as we talked about. But so I don't know exactly how they did this, but part of it would have had to do with the time period that they actually did them. So if they were doing them, they had
to be still
interviewing them in the 20s and 30s, these were older people, so that would have been how they could have done it. So
another good place to look too, don't forget newspapers. Newspapers, because you'll find an article, oldest living, slave, former slaves still living in our community, and somebody will go do an interview with them. So I've seen several of those. Or somebody's having a 100th birthday party, and they'll say she was, formerly enslaved in so-and-so's property. And, then you've got that link right there. So don't forget to check newspapers. Sometimes you just have to go to a community and just type in the word slave, type in the word, they really didn't call them enslaved. That's kind of something that, we're saying today. So type in the word slave. You'll get runaway slave ads, which sometimes are great because they'll give names, descriptions, and the owner. And so if you find those are great to put up on one of these sites. It might help somebody to find who they're looking for, because even if that person never went back to that, they got away, they never went back, they were never caught. You've got that name, and you've got that enslaver, who owned them. So, and sometimes there are unfortunately follow-ups, that they were found and that kind of thing. But don't forget the newspapers. That's a great resource for connecting people together.
Yes, and I think sort of what kind of comes to my mind as we're talking, and this is not quick research, and it's when you find a collection, whether it's you're listening to the narratives, whether you're reading the newspaper, with the runaway slave ads, whether you are looking at the Southern Claims Commissions, sit with what I like to tell people. If anybody who's listened to me for long knows, I'm like, sit with the record. Don't grab your ancestor and run. Don't look at it and go, my ancestor's not here, and leave. Spend time in that record, even after you find your ancestor or who you're looking for, because there's so much more that you can get. There's so much more. There's more history, the social history aspect of why things were happening, why they happened the way they did, what was actually happening. Maybe it doesn't help you in the moment, but it can very well help you further on down the road. And in the very least, it's going to help you understand what your ancestor, whoever it was, what they were going through, what they were experiencing, what was kind of going on in their head at that time. And we have to kind of get in their heads to really be able to find them sometimes. So anymore.
That's such a good point about sitting with the record. It's such a good point. I mean, I had an example of that just this morning before we started, and it has nothing to do with African American, but I had somebody send me, some records trying to find somebody. This is all the information I have. So I pulled up the record, and it said very clearly his occupation was a truck driver. That's going to help me somewhere along the line, and it explains a lot with what I'm looking for. It explains a lot. And so, because we can't find that person, well, if he was a truck driver, he probably wasn't, he was just passing through.
Passing through, that's right.
Exactly. And so we need to go back, and even if we've been researching for years and years, if you're stumped, sometimes we create our own brick walls because we missed something in a record. Go back through and look at everything and see if there's a clue that you missed, whether, no matter what kind of research you're doing, pull all those clues out. Go back and look again, because like I said, we create our own brick walls.
Oh, yeah. Well,
we really do.
That's number 31 in my 31 out of the box too.
Exactly. And it's so true. And it all depends on, when we first started, that's all we did, didn't we? We just got the names, the dates, and maybe sometimes the places.
Oh, I did.
And then as we get, better at it, we realize we need to analyze a whole record. So always go back and look, and especially go back and look in hindsight of what you've just found again. What is this telling me now with what I just found? Because I got all the information out, but this information based on this information may be telling a different story than what we originally thought our story was telling us. So
right. I often think my website's more about telling you how to do all the things I did wrong so that you won't do them in the future. Don't do it like I did. Let me show you the right way to do it now.
Exactly. What we wish we knew then. Right. Yep. Exactly.
Well, Cheri, thank you so much for coming and joining me today. I think it's funny you had to go all the way to Albuquerque for us to join me.
We only live, probably 3 hours apart?
3 hours from each other, yeah. So it's funny. I mean, half the time it's at Root Tech in Utah that we meet each other, or in South Carolina sometimes.
Can I just real quick say, for anybody going to Roots Tech 2020, and you're interested in the subject, I will be doing a panel discussion at Roots Tech with Sharon Gillens. And last year I did a presentation, and in that presentation, I thought to myself, this is a kind of a lecture, and I'm just talking and telling people but this would be so much better if we could sit around. I said, I wish we could just all sit in a circle and we could just talk. And so we took that idea and presented it, and they're going to let us do it. And so we're actually it's going to be a panel discussion. It's not going to be a lecture. We want to hear from, descendants of both groups. How can we work together? Bring some ideas. What can we do to help one another? We need to have this conversation. So I'd like to invite anybody watching, if you're not planning on going to Roots Tech, go to Roots Tech. Come and be part. This is an important discussion. So come and be prepared to, shoot me some ideas about what you would like for us to talk about, because we are, we haven't submitted our final, we haven't done our final PowerPoints and things yet. So nothing is finalized. So if you've got some ideas that you would like for us to talk about, please let me know, and we'll incorporate those things, and we will talk about what you need to help you connect and find your ancestors. So thanks for letting me plug that. I think it's going to be it was really powerful last year, and I think it's going to be even more powerful in 2020.
I think that'll be a great session. I'm looking forward to it myself. So anyway, well, thank you guys. I will make sure I've got all of Cheri's contact information and places where you can find Cheri on the web and the comments below once we get off. And I will see you next week. Yes, I'm going to be in town for 2 weeks in a row, guys. That's pretty good for me these days. Actually, I had to think of it. I'm like, I think I'll be in town. So anyway, if you are watching this, thank you guys, all those who had questions. And thank you, Debbie. I appreciate your questions and glad these were helpful to you. If you have questions, if you're watching this on the replay, absolutely feel free to leave a question in the comments. We'll be watching them and make sure we get your questions answered. So thank you so much. And thank you, Cheri.
Thank you. This is a subject I'm getting more and more passionate about, so I
I can
appreciate
tell.
being
I
on.
think it's a great thing. I know. I love to do it.
Thanks,
All right,
so
guys. I'll see you next week. All right. Bye-bye.